was lovely. Thank you, Bill and Paula. We are honored to receive your gift of music. February is a short month, but rich in observances. For example, Valentine's Day is next Sunday, as Bill and Paula reminded us with their first selection. And today, many Americans gather around the communal corn chip bowl to celebrate the annual secular holiday known as Super Bowl Sunday. May the best team win. And with this morning's very special time for all ages is our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, Beth Curtis. I'll draw out her name so she can come up here. Take your time.
It's a wonderful thing to run out of order of services on a cold Sunday. So share with your neighbor if you didn't get one. It's often said that life is a journey. Sometimes the path feels clear, and sometimes there are so many signs pointing in every direction that it's hard to know which way to go. This is a story about a young boy learning how to find his own way. It's called The North Star, written and illustrated by Peter H. Reynolds. A sweet breeze met the boy as he awoke to his journey. He traveled on all fours for quite some time, and he grew, and he paused. And one day he had the urge to stand, to walk. It made his journey easier. He could run too, but for the most part, he walked. He wandered the fields, exploring, sometimes stopping, sometimes dancing, sometimes going happily in circles, and sometimes napping. One day, the boy saw an oak leaf drift and land on the water. He wondered how the leaf managed to float, the way the stars seemed to float in the night sky. A rabbit running by interrupted his thoughts. "Where are you going in such a hurry?" asked the boy. But the rabbit shot out of sight, disappearing onto a path that the boy had never noticed before. The boy left the floating leaf and wandered towards the path. There he saw a cat. The cat purred gently. "Where did the rabbit go in such a hurry?" the boy asked. "Brrr. He was in such a rush to start his journey, and it's time for you to start your journey too," answered the cat. "Oh, but I have been on a journey," the boy cried. "I've seen some wonderful things. Some I understand and some I don't, like how a leaf floats on the water." "Brrr. Well, that's fascinating, but I'd hate for you to be late. You don't want to be left behind." "Behind? Who's ahead of me?" "Brrr. You wouldn't believe how many. You know, you're not the only one on this journey." The boy began walking down the path. It stretched out far ahead of him. Despite the confusing signs, he was followed the well-worn path. But he had a growing feeling that he was lost. The forest seemed to be growing thicker. The soil was wet and muddy, making every step a struggle. After many miles, he could not take another step. He noticed an oak leaf drift from the sky, swirling on the breeze. It disappeared behind a grove of trees. He stepped off the path to follow it. The boy found the leaf floating on the pond and in a peaceful clearing, like a delicate boat on a dreamy voyage. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice. Brrr. "Oh, there you are. I was worried," said the cat. "Don't wander off like that. Now hurry. You're falling behind." So the boy ran and ran and ran. He noticed the forest getting darker and thicker. The muddy ground became covered with water, and he could no longer see the path. He sloshed through a swamp until he came to a clearing. There he saw a bird. "You look lost," the bird said. "Well, I don't think so. I'm not sure if I'm lost," the boy replied. "I really hadn't thought about it." "Hadn't thought about it," said the bird. "You must have some idea of where you're going, yes?" "Well, I've been following the path. It seems as though many people have taken it before me, and there have been signs all along the way. And a very helpful cat guided me back to the path when I started to wander." The bird paused and asked the boy, "But where do you want to be going?" "Well, I'm not sure," said the boy as he looked around at the dark, tangled swamp. "But I do know that this isn't where I want to be. I guess I am lost." The bird asked, "Ask yourself where it is where you want to go, and then follow the signs you already know." "Signs? What signs? Where are they?" But the bird flew off into the cloudy sky. The boy looked up into the sky, something he had not done in a long, long time. He tried desperately to see where the bird had gone, and as he did, the clouds seemed to melt there above him. There was a star, a very, very bright star. The boy stared at the star and felt a pang in his heart, a tingling in his spine, a whisper in his ear. He could hear the star, and the voice sounded very familiar. The boy began to walk toward the star, and as he did, he noticed many other stars stretched out before him like a great big map. They had been there all along, waiting for him. He stopped a moment, enjoying his guiding stars, when a voice croaked behind him. "What are you staring at? Or up? What is up there? What's so interesting?" The boy waded closer and answered, "Stars. I'm looking at stars." "What stars?" asked the frog. "I see a dark sky and mist and low green clouds." "You don't see them?" the boy asked. "Why, they're helping guide me out of the swamp. Would you like to come with me?" "No, thank you," the frog smiled. "I'm quite at home here in the bog. I swam here as a tadpole, and I grew up here, and here I will stay." The boy realized at that moment that everyone has a different journey, different signs, different stars, their own constellations. The boy left the frog, who croaked, "Good luck on your journey." As he ventured beyond the swampy forest, the boy heard a cry. It was the rabbit who had been in such a hurry earlier, stranded on a limb in the middle of the rushing river. The boy waded out, but realized that the river was too deep. The rabbit was trapped. Then he saw an oak leaf drift by, and that gave him an idea. The boy fashioned a boat out of swamp grass and twigs and rescued the rabbit. And the boy smiled, having helped make the rabbit's journey easier. The boy looked up. He noticed that the star had become even brighter. He followed the star, and as he did, the muddy ground grew drier, then grassy, then soft and sandy, and finally he came to rest atop a dune. There below him was a beach and a boat. The boy looked out toward the horizon. The star glowed steadily, reminding him that he still had a long journey ahead. But it was his own journey, his very own wonderful journey. The beginning. What a great way to end a story with a beginning. The boy hasn't reached a final destination. Well, not yet. Instead, he's discovered something much more important: how to listen, how to notice, and how to trust his own journey. This story reminds us that we're all on journeys. Small ones that we make every day, and bigger ones across our entire lives. Sometimes we follow well-worn paths. Sometimes we realize we are lost. And sometimes when we finally stop and look up, I just lost my place. Sorry, look up. We notice what has been there all along. Now, the star didn't tell the boy exactly where to go, but things like stars and compasses and maps in our lives may help us remember who we are when deciding which way to go next. We also have inner guides, our personal values, our Unitarian Universalist values, and the little voices in our heads that whisper when something feels right and something doesn't feel right. So may we remember to pause now and then and look up and to trust our guides that help us find our way on our very own wonderful journeys.
As the song leaders come forward to lead us in the opening hymn, Do You Hear? Do You Hear? The words can be found in the gray hymnal, number 112, and also on the screen. We will sing the first 3 verses only. Please rise in body or spirit. I now invite Chris Kynes to come forward to light the chalice this morning as you listen to these words. We recognize National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day and pray this light will shine on the systemic inequalities that proportionately affect Black communities, fueling our commitment to dismantle racism that is a public health crisis. We light it in solidarity with our Black siblings, affirming their inherent dignity and worth. Let this flame be a beacon of hope, guiding us as we work towards a world free of stigma, where everybody has access to healing, support, and restorative justice. Thank you, Chris.
Amen.
Well, good morning and welcome again. We're so happy that you've joined us today. My name is not Mary Avery, as it says in your order of service. I am actually Donna Zimmerman, and it's my privilege to step in and fill in for Mary today, who was under the weather. So she did all the work. I have the easy part, just doing the reading. For our newcomers or first-timers, if you have not already done so, I invite you to visit the welcome table by the entrance, where you will find some information about our church and our denomination, as well as receive a name tag so that we can start to call you by your name. After the service, there will be refreshments served at the windows in the back of the sanctuary, where you will have lots of opportunities to socialize. There will also be chairs reserved at that time for those who may have mobility issues. Our hope is that you will find a safe, welcoming, and loving community here, and that you can imagine yourselves being a part of. Again, welcome. Before we begin, we have a few announcements to make. Next Saturday, February 14th at noon, there will be a gathering at Don Eduardo's in Riverside at Park and King for a time to remember, pay tribute, laugh, and reminisce about our dear Jim Woods, who we lost earlier this year. Please respond to Cindy Jorgensen or Debbie Jones if you plan to attend. Religious Education is offering a new adult education program called UU Elevator Speech, focusing on helping us articulate what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. Registration is limited to 12 people, and you can find the sign-up in next week's newsletter or email Beth. You can find more information about events and activities happening at BBUUC in your order of service, our weekly email publication this week, or in our monthly email publication, The Journey, as well as our bulletin boards and signs in the entryway. We let you know many, many ways what all is going on here. I now invite everybody to take out your cell phones and other electronic devices and turn them silent. Thank you. As Unitarian Universalists, we do not have a shared mandated creed that everybody must follow. Rather, we have shared values that guide us in our lives, our community, and in the wider world. At BBUUC, we express our intentions to live by these values in our Congregational covenant, and I invite you to remain seated and join me in saying the words which appear on the screen and in your order of service to remind you of these intentions. We covenant to engage one another with honesty, kindness, and respect, to value diversity, seek understanding of our differences, and practice gracious accountability with care, love, and empathy. We make these promises to those who are here and those yet to come, so that we may be a safe, welcoming, and beloved community of acceptance, learning, and transformation. Now please rise in body or spirit to sing our call to worship. You'll find the words in your order of service and, conveniently, on the screen. Thank you again, Bill and Paula. As Marilyn Jones and Suzanne Ludwig come forward to assist with the offering, please know that your generous gifts support the mission and work of this church. We have modern ways of giving on our website in the order of service, and we still engage in the ancient practice of passing the plate. Regardless of your choices about giving, we invite you to participate in this practice by taking the plate when it comes to you and passing it to your neighbor or the row behind you. When the morning offering has been received, I'll invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our offertory hymn, number 123. Our speaker this morning is Dr. Mark Yount. He has graced our pulpit many times. He is a longtime member of this congregation. We are always grateful to have his insights and his perspective on things. Mark?
Thank you, Donna. See if I can not knock that over. My topic today is one that I first took up 23 years ago when Bill Sinkford was running for president of our organization, the UUA. My topic is spiritual finding. Bill Sinkford remarked that Unitarian Universalists are very good with spiritual seeking, but people want spiritual finding too. As I revisit that topic, I would be sorely disappointed if in 23 years I hadn't found anything. Wouldn't that constitute a kind of failure in life's growth and arc of life? So what I'm trying to bring to you this morning is the pith of what is most essential to what I count as the spiritual growth in my life. And I found in trying to lay those things out that I've been drifting a bit away from the precision of intellect that philosophy demands, but perhaps coming more in line with the lived experience that I share with so many of you here in this church each week that we can be here. It is not the point for me to begin by defining my terms. To share the pith of it is to share what matters in life as we live it, about growth in who I am. So we don't need to brand it. We don't need to treat it as copyright enforcement. Sinkford was very interested in changing our image, you may recall. He wanted us to embrace spirituality, and so foregrounding spirituality in that time, in that context, had a public relations purpose that I don't care about today. For us, I would simply say ours is a free-range spirituality. Whatever golden eggs we find got laid wherever they fell. So we can experience spiritual finding in meditation, in prayer, with animal companions, in the wilderness, in caring activities and in service and with family, in the arts, even music perhaps. And so there's any number of ways that we can be on our separate paths, and there are any number of things that might count as a finding. So point number one I would make today as a philosopher is let's not rush to definition. Let's not try to lay things out in a way that would close off what might later on count as a real finding for some real person in this very real room that is nicely heated today. Thank you. So many ways of seeking and many ways of what could count as a finding, but there's a paradox that is, I think, especially poignant for Unitarian Universalists as opposed to other cognized religions in our community. We share our seeking and whatever finding we may do, and we share that even when the things we believe in are logically incompatible. I can be sitting between a pagan and a humanist and not agree at all with either one, but we're sharing that. And that's cool. In fact, anyway, I'll skip all the in facts, it's cool. You know that. I, even in my own spiritual life, draw on incompatible sources. In fact, the last teaching position that I had before I came to Jacksonville was at a Jesuit school, St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia. And my chair for most of that time was a nun. On one occasion, I don't recall what it was, I had the opportunity to share with her what my philosophy of religion was. And her immediate response to that was, "Mark, it sounds like you're approaching religion as a buffet where you can take whatever you want." Is there a problem with that? So welcome to the Unitarian Universalist buffet, because that's what I'm doing. My sermon today is I'm bringing my personally seasoned dish to the buffet. That's what this sermon is. It's my dish for our buffet. All right. I want to point out that just as our ways of believing differ, just as the shorthands or the hyphenations we might use with our UU characters vary from seat to seat in this room, our ways of seeking vary too. There are people who really embrace ritual and find it nourishing and a continuity in their spiritual lives. There are others like myself who are a little more random in the things that we draw ourselves to. But in our different ways, again, we share, and I think sometimes the richness of our differences contributes most of all to the community that we are. There's all kinds of research that if you want to have an effective group, you need different points of view and different characteristics and different kinds of people. I want to take one measure of personality difference that many of you all have heard of, the Myers-Briggs Personality Inventory. One of the dimensions on the Myers-Briggs is the difference between judging and perceiving. People who are judgers are a little bit like accountants who want the book to balance. And when it's unbalanced, when we're looking for something we haven't found yet, there's a little bit of discomfort with that. At the other end of that scale are the perceivers. You'll never guess which I am. The perceivers are like, no, this is so cool. Can't we stretch it out a little longer? Let's make the journey go a little longer before we miss some things on the way. You know, we can get to the destination anytime. So what I want to suggest is that for each of those personality types, when it comes to spiritual seeking and spiritual finding, there is an error that we can fall into. And it's two sides of the same error. It goes like this. I'll start with the judger. The point of seeking is to find. And once you find, you don't have to search anymore. Who in this room would keep looking after you found the car keys you were looking for? Oh, I got to keep looking because I want to continue to enjoy the journey. No, you found your keys. Move on to something else. So the error there is you discard the value of the journey as anything other than just a means to your end. And that misses something. But the flip side of that is when the perceiver might say, the point is the journey itself, and the destination closes that off. Then you're dismissing the finding. The perceiver might say, the only authentic searching is searching that goes on forever and cannot result in finding, or you've been unfaithful to the search. And I want to say that we have to understand seeking and finding as belonging together. And I want to use the very straightforward example of science as a discipline and a method that is shared and has a history and a tradition and institutions that, like it or not, have accomplished some very powerful things. And the way science works, in the words of my favorite 21st century historian, Yuval Harari, author of the best-selling *Sapiens*, he said that the greatest scientific discovery ever was the discovery of ignorance as a discovery. Because if we don't know that, we can look for it. Now, that reminds me as a philosopher of somebody who lived a long time ago. I try to remember the name. It was Socrates or something, I think. That if I'm wise, it's because I don't think I know what I don't know. For Socrates, ignorance was the height of wisdom, to know that you don't know what you don't know. So let's take from that if we follow science, if we follow Socrates, that we're on a path that can keep going and keep going and keep going. But science tells us something else, too. That doesn't mean we're getting nowhere. Robert Pirsig, in the great book, The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, analyzes science as saying that the very method of science has baked into it something that would drive the judger nuts. For every answer that you get, you generate 3 new questions. And that's 3 new questions that are going to generate new answers. And so the infinitely possible efforts of science just magnify the mystery. And in our own day, with particularly the depths of quantum ontology, that's what we find. You got to give up a big chunk of your worldview. I'm not going into that today, but it's true. So I really like something else that Yuval Harari said in his 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. You'll like this. It's really pithy. Questions you cannot answer are usually far better than answers you cannot question. Ain't that the truth? So yes, we'll embrace ceaseless questioning. Questioning will keep us on our toes. Questioning will renew that wonderful innocence of ignorance that keeps us open to be drawn to the mystery. Our questioning reviews and renews our ignorance and opens us to that mystery. But if seeking is continuous, where do we find finding? Not as something apart from the seeking. And I want to illustrate that with a contrast, of which I'm one of the terms. When I did a version of the sermon 23 years ago, I used as a text with the readings the novel Siddhartha, which is Hermann Hesse's great fictionalized bio of the life of the Buddha. And near the very end of the book, Siddhartha's great lifelong friend, Govinda, who's been searching, meets this enlightened person and then realizes this is Siddhartha. He says, Siddhartha, tell me, you're enlightened and I'm not. Can you give me something? Can you tell me anything? Because I've been seeking and I'm not there. And Siddhartha says, Govinda, to seek means not to find. Because you are so intent on your seeking that the not being that precludes you from realizing what you really were seeking for. Now, I'm not going to try to unpack all that or make sense of it. My point is this. This is the point I want to make. Govinda was a seeker in an existential sense that many of us can relate to. Govinda had a deep sense of need in his life. He was not right with life because he knew in his soul that the point of this arc of life is to become enlightened, and he hadn't gotten there. Do you follow me? I'm not like that. There's a chapter in my book called You May Already Be a Bodhisattva. Not that the book is out yet, but it may already be a book. I have had a lifelong preoccupation even with spirituality, born on Christmas Day to a Christian mother and then into Jung and all this weird metaphysical stuff in high school and on and on and on through philosophy to all kinds of stuff. But I have never felt it as a problem. I've never felt that I should be enlightened. I've never felt that I needed some kind of redemption or religious grace. In short, my spiritual journey is like shopping for used records. Cool, look what I found. And that's my Unitarian Universalist journey. I think there are people for whom seeking works differently and that they want to find something that will satisfy a need that I don't feel. So what I want to suggest is that when I begin, not from our UU brand, but from my own experience, I want to look not to the spiritual as something that's outside of life, not to the spiritual as what will fill a gap in what's already there. I want to look to the motif of growth. And that, in fact, is what you'll find if you look backwards to the principles and purposes that we used to have on the back of our cereal boxes, the ingredients herein. We said spiritual growth was what we were covenanting to promote in ourselves and among our congregations and with each other. So I want to start not from the spiritual and not from a process that has a doctrine to it, but from growth. And when I do that, one of the things that stands out is not just any change counts as growth. Growth is good change. Growth is change I want. It may be hard change. It may be painful change. It may be something I really didn't want to have happen that way. But I have the sense it's taken me somewhere that is good. There's a value involved as soon as I invoke the notion of growth, right? For me, the conflicts and problems that I have deeply felt in the heart of my lived experience have not been what people would call spiritual usually. They've been with the worldly world. They've been with employers and other things. But for me, my seeking, my goal, what I want was about having an experience in my life that I wasn't having in the same way, well, in a way that relates to Govinda's sense of dissatisfaction with his life. So I want to suggest that maybe what for a lot of people doesn't seem spiritual, you just go to therapy for that. For me, my therapy is the most spiritual seeking I've been doing. And I believe that the most spiritual finding I've been doing is connected with that. Because I have come to believe that seeking in that deep way is not about anything I would say or believe as a belief. It's about who I am and how I am. It's about my being before it's about anything I do or anything I believe. It's a deep sense, and by that I want to go back to the root of spiritual in spirit, whether it's in the Hebrew or the Greek, the breath of life. Spirit is what animates my life. I'm not talking a separate metaphor. We don't have to argue about souls. I'm talking about what animates my life, what animates your life, whatever that is. That's what I'm calling spirit. And then I want to say, when I gave you a sermon about my father's death, and I said, for me, what matters in life is to try to live intentionally, to live on purpose. I didn't have it quite right. I have a different take today. My take today is what matters is how alive I am. I want to say that the value that lurks behind things and calls it growth is the value of aliveness. Am I all in with life? How alive is my being? And Fritz Perls, bless his heart, was onto this a long time ago. You're most alive and maybe only alive in the moment. And so mindfulness in the moment sounds great. We can have magazines revolve around that. But short of what we would think of as mindfulness, just standing honestly and openly in that moment, that kind of alive, for me, is the essence and the pith of spiritual finding. So I want to just quickly give you a few motifs that I have found associated with that as I've gotten deeper into it, and I'll skip a lot of other things to go there. I want to suggest that these motifs that I've read off my life growth, they may not have a good analytic accounting as a philosopher, but they seem right to me. I want to share that. First, and this is sort of like Wallace Stevens' Notes Toward the Supreme Fiction. It must be free. What counts for me as spiritual finding has to involve the feeling of real freedom, of being unburdened, of being able to navigate more easily, to choose, not like an alcoholic chooses whether to have the second drink, but like someone who's not an alcoholic chooses. To not be clingy or attached, to be coming from a place that's natural and authentic in me, to be free, to be open, perceptive and receptive and attentive, to be fluid, adaptive in the moment, and in that, perhaps open to deep mystery and open to others, empathetic and caring, so free and open. And to be open isn't to close yourself off and say, well, I'm going to take my little open self and hide. It's to be engaged, to be in the world and of the world with others. It's to be, and here's where intentional comes in, not necessarily deliberate, certainly not controlling, but to be with it and wanting it and saying yes to what you're about. To be engaged is also, as with courtship, an element of commitment. I'm on this, I'm in this, I am putting myself forth. I pledge my troth in a kind of ongoing sort of tacit way. Positive. The things I'm talking about just can't be in my being if I'm all tightly wound and anxious and negative and depressed about these things. My moods will change. I'll get pissed off. I'll get depressed. But under all that, the feeling more than the thought, I'm appreciative. I'm hopeful. I am, if you will, following my bliss. The point of my life is to be drawn by enjoyment and not by some other standard that contradicts that bliss. Meaningful as well. The sense of the whole, of belonging to a greater purpose, perhaps. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist, philosopher, concentration camp victim, wrote beautifully that with the right why, we can endure almost any what, but not the other way around. And I want to kind of sum that up in terms of my being by saying that if I were going to bring it to a point, it would be believe. Believe in yourself, believe in the ark, believe in whatever that greater whole is that you're a natural part of, ineluctably, whatever that might be. Believe, be live, be alive. All of those things. And David, I'm sorry I keep coming back to you, but David Rulison is an admitted mystic, and I worship that about you. I think it's wonderful. I was a closet mystic most of my adult life. And the mystic says, the reality, the deepest being of yourself and of your world embodies every contradiction you can think of that can't be put into words. And so I want to say that in that sense, I would feel I'm not finding deeply enough if it doesn't at least open into that direction. So dig this. The last thing I wrote down as I was retooling some things early this morning was this lyric phrase. Wake up to find out that you are the eyes of the world. I got in my car. I said, I don't want to hear what's on my phone. I don't know what's on satellite radio. I hit the favorites button. I turned down where I don't usually go. I hit Grateful Dead. Guess what song was playing? This is Jungian synchronicity. It's textbook. Wake up to find out that you are the eyes of the world. The heart has its beaches, its homeland, and thoughts of its own. Wake now, discover that you are the song that the morning brings. The heart has its seasons, its evenings, and songs of its own. So I close. Sometimes the songs that we hear are just songs of our own. May each of you find what satisfies you most, whether or not you knew that that was what you've been seeking.
Thank you, Mark. As our song leaders return, please rise and body your spirit to sing our closing hymn, number 113 in the gray hymnal, Where is Our Holy Church, and remain standing for the closing words. Now, as Chris Kynes returns to extinguish our chalice, as we leave this holy place to seek and find, journey and settle, protest and accept, may we take with us this blessing from Reverend Linda Barnes. May you embrace your growing with compassion. May courage be yours as you answer your heart's calling. May beauty and wonder be yours even when the going gets rough. And may love always be at your center. May it be so.